Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Good afternoon for another episode of the Cashflow Project podcast. I'm your host, Vince Gethings with Tri-City Equity Group. Today on the show, we have Jay Bourgana, who's a very sought-after business visionary who is known for turning struggling businesses into success stories with over 25 years of experience in the U.S., China, Europe. He excels in finance, marketing, and building highly operating teams. He's a true entrepreneur that has taken his personal startup from 0 to 350 million in residential sales in just 4 years. He hails from out in Hawaii, island of Oahu, where he enjoys the island life with his family. And he invests in real estate, giving back to community and helping other entrepreneurs reach success. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So you are pretty experienced, 25 years of experience. On this show, I want to focus a little bit more on the business side of your experience of your career. Most of the conversation on this show has been about real estate, buying and scaling real estate, commercial, multifamily, things like that. But with your background and your expertise, I think would be better served to focus more on the business side. So let's just jump right into that. Well, what is, a little bit about yourself? I did the early intro, but what is a little bit about yourself, kind of where you started from, maybe your first business that you got into?
My first business ever, it was a small chain of convenience stores, and I thought it would be a very simple proposition, just picking a location, put in inventory, having an employee, and then we were good to go. I didn't have any systems for managing inventory. I didn't have any good accounting systems. I didn't have good management skills at the time. And I had a W-2 job. I was working. And so after probably just very few months, we start seeing our inventory disappear and massive amount of shrinkage. And very quickly, we realized we had the wrong people and we had to essentially, cut our losses and move on. But it was a great lesson for sure. And I learned a lot that when you see someone successful at a different company, it doesn't necessarily mean that person has been the reason why that company is successful. Mm-hmm. And then just going and stealing that person does not necessarily mean that you're going to steal their success or you're going to bring that success with them. And so that was a big lesson. And then just, trust but verify, have good accounting systems, have good inventory management systems, and have good processes in place to make sure that you're on track and you're not losing money.
Oh, that's great. So that was a small, was it ABC? Were they ABC stores?
Kind of like an ABC store. Yeah, pretty much just like that. We had like we grew fast. We went from like a couple to about 10 in like 2 years. Yeah.
And that was on island in Hawaii?
No, not in Hawaii. No, that was actually my first business in Morocco. That's where I'm from.
Oh, wow. Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was, when was that? Like what years were that?
97, 96, 97, 98.
Okay. 97, 98. And then you sold out of those or?
Yeah, we just kind of sold their inventory and, cut our losses.
Okay. So good learning experience. Doesn't seem like it set you back too much, which is good. You didn't have, dig yourself a hole you'd take 10 years to dig out of, which, the horror stories you hear, a lot of people's first business, they drain their 401ks and IRAs and borrow from their parents. And then, not a good, when those go.
Well, you learn, one thing that I've heard before said, but you learn a lot more from tough times than you learn from good times.
That's
And
absolutely true. Yeah.
yeah, so I've learned quite a bit, and that set me up to be very successful afterward.
Absolutely. And we can go, I'll probably tell some stories on that during the show about the lessons learned during the hard times, especially with my first franchise. But so what made you go into this convenience store or just business in general? You had your W-2, why this business or asset class versus other things like real estate or any other opportunity? What attracted you about the businesses?
That's a great question. I just didn't really have any like back then, back that was a long time ago. Didn't have a really good, well thought out process on what kind of like asset class to go to. It was just so it happened that I had a friend and a partner who knew a little bit about the margins and about the ROI on such asset, and he made it very appealing, and he convinced me to tag along on his business, and I end up being the one that's kind of running it at some point. But yeah, there was a really well thought out process. I wish we had bought the assets. I wish we had taken debt and bought the real estate. At least we would make money on the real estate and sell the business. But we didn't do that. We were not that sophisticated at the time. But yeah, it was a great opportunity to learn. To learn how to run a business and how to manage people, how to hire people, how to manage. How to have the right technology, the right vendors, the right suppliers. Yeah.
All right. No, that's good. So that is like early or 97, probably early 2000s.
Yeah.
And then what happened next? What was next?
Yeah. So I moved from the banking world into manufacturing, and I worked for a company that manufactured goods for retail, anything from food products, health and beauty products, home decor products. And we manufactured stuff in China, distributed everywhere in the U.S. I worked in Southern California for a couple of years on the operational side, and then I moved to China, where I spent about 5 years there. And I ran a 1 million square foot facility with 3,000 people that worked there, lived there, ate there. And we had vendors and suppliers all over the country. And that was a great experience because it really taught me that the concepts of people are people everywhere you go. The principles that work with managing people in the United States or in France or in Morocco are the same that work in China. And the concepts of like vendor management, accountability, leadership, team building, all those things work anywhere. And so it was a great opportunity because I did it at scale. There were big numbers, lots of people, and I learned like a ton. I learned about developing a team, developing a culture, creating processes in place. So I spent about 5 years doing that. 2007 happened, and a lot of the retailers that we worked with stopped paying us and started finding creative ways to file different bankruptcy chapters so they don't pay us. And Bank of America took $100 million line of credit out, and we were pretty much a $960 million company that went out of business within 90 days.
Wow.
And that's another lesson where a successful
they took out your line of credit. They called it. Okay.
They just called it, yeah. And that's the lesson that when in times of credit crunch, anything can happen. That 2007, 2008 was a different, very unique scenario. But when liquidity shrinks, it can be challenging. But also for me personally, at the time, it was the fact that you can work for a company, or you can have a business that's attached to a company, and you can grow as far as you can, but you're attached to that one business. You have all your eggs in one basket. You're not in control of your destiny. And so from that moment on, I figured I I needed to be in control of my own destiny. I need to be, more own the businesses, own the assets that I'm part of. So I first started out with a consulting business, and after 2008, I was known for being a turnaround guy. And after 2008, every business became a turnaround. So I was getting calls from all over the United States about these businesses that were struggling, either with cost or labor or productivity. And I spent about 5 years just traveling the country, doing these 3, 6 to 12 month projects, turning around businesses. And that was very interesting because I've done so many different, affected to so many different industries, anywhere from plastic injection molding to chicken slaughterhouses to meat, food packing businesses to pharmaceuticals. And when you go into these businesses and you see all these challenges they go through, 80% of the challenges are people challenges. And if you can understand how to solve those issues, and how to manage, how to walk leadership into making the right decisions, you can make you can affect massive change and help that business grow and thrive in a very short period of time. And so I did that for about 5 years, and I was traveling all over the place, all over the country. And I got tired from just living in hotels. At the time, I was living in hotels for about 10 years. I didn't have a lease to my name. So I came back to Southern California, and I was literally looking to lease a house. And a couple of friends of mine says, "Hey, it would be cheaper to buy." It was 2011. And I started looking at buying, and I bought one, and I bought two, and I saw value grow before I even closed escrow. Mm-hmm. So I got curious about real estate, and I wanted to learn about real estate investing, but I didn't know how to articulate that. So instead of going and finding courses around real estate investing, I went and got my real estate license. And I just so it happened I met my wife around the same time, and we formed family and got married and all that. And now whatever I'm doing became serious. So I got sucked into real estate sales, and I started having babies. And I hunkered down pretty much. And after 4 years, I lifted my head, and I found out that we have this $350 million business, and that was growing with a big team. And just so it happened around the same time, this big independent company was looking to grow through acquisition, and they knocked on our door. And so I sold 70% share of the company. I kept 30%. We grew over time. We doubled year one. We doubled year two. And I, essentially reinvested the proceeds back into real estate to get more passive, and stayed on board. We did acquisitions through that company. We grew that company through acquisitions. And then I fully exited end of 21. So now I'm full-time, business acquirer. That's all I do. Just acquire businesses, turn them around, help them grow, and for either potential sale or forever hold.
Awesome. Congratulations on that exit.
Thanks.
And that was a Southern California company?
Yeah, Southern California, correct.
Nice. So the 70, that 30% is something I'm learning too. Was that like, I don't want to get too much into the business of it, but was that something that was like in the contract, like to hold on? Like, because I know a lot of these things, as we were talking for the show, like going out and us buying companies and individually here, but holding on, if they have like a key player, like a key man in that company, write it into the contract to hold them on for 2-3 years. Was it that's why you held on for the extra time, or?
Yeah. So a big part of like the business is the leadership team, and if you think the leader is a key person and you want to reduce the risk of the leader walking away and then all the business walking away or all the people walking away, then you want to create an incentive to keep them in the business. Yeah. And create a structure where they stay on board. And you could do that by keeping shares, or you could do that by making payments attached to an earnout. So it doesn't necessarily mean, I like the the reason why I kept share, because when I sold, I didn't sell because I wanted to exit. I sold because I wanted to grow, because I figured that, attaching myself to a bigger ship is going to allow me to more resources, and it's going to give me a little bit like a bigger platform to grow. So not everybody sells because they want to exit the business or they want to cash out. A lot of people sell because they feel that they've taken the company to where their capacity is, and they need to partner up with someone else that's going to take them to the next level.
That makes perfect sense. Love it. So 2021 to now, you kind of exited or finished with that other company right in the middle of COVID. And then now about a year and a half or so later, what have you been working on since then?
Yeah, so bought a lot of real estate, a lot of commercial real estate, and then built a co-working space here in Hawaii, and invested in several companies from plumbing to HVAC to technology, technology contractors, and a lot of small businesses that I bought. I haven't sold any of them yet. We're still working through the growth plans. And I've been busy just acquiring either real estate assets or business assets.
Love it. All right. No, that's good. Keeps you busy. And so
yeah,
I missed this part. When did you go from California to Hawaii?
Early 2020. So as soon as COVID hit, I figured we're going to be stuck in this thing for 2 years at least. So I said, might as well be stuck somewhere nice.
All right, got it. That makes perfect sense. Okay, yeah. Nice. So hanging out in Hawaii in paradise, buying companies, living the dream. What were some of the, I guess, biggest lessons you learned? Because as your unique perspective by operating in the US, China, and Europe, you mentioned earlier that people are people, and if you're a good manager and good leader, a lot of those skills will go through different areas. But is there anything, I guess, more or different or actionable as far as like tactics, how they do things different, or KPIs that they do different in those different countries like China, Europe, or throughout different U.S. states that you've learned that you were able to kind of capitalize on as your growth as an entrepreneur with the experiences from those other areas?
Yeah, and I mean, there are some nuances, not necessarily in terms of KPIs or things are managed. The nuances are usually more cultural. And if you can, for example, in China, there are there's a concept called guanji, which is essentially relationships. Everything is based on the relationship. So knowing people, like they're in China, you can't do business with anybody until you have a relationship with them. So when you go meet a vendor or a client, you don't talk about business whatsoever for like hours until you have rapport. So you go to these dinners and these things, and you don't talk about business until probably the next day. And then so you have to have like connected, build rapport, build trust before you even start working, talking about business, which is something that in the US, we don't take a lot of time building that relationship and that connection. And it benefited me quite a bit when I started applying it here in the US, where when I talk to my clients, I want a much deeper connection. I want my clients to tell me about their relationship with their kids, about their parents' stuff, about their history, about like I want to go have a deeper connection with my clients. The same way with my vendors. Like for example, one of the things that I've learned not only from the Chinese but also from a big company like Walmart is that Walmart gets very involved with the way the operation of their vendors, and they want to help them and they want to support them and they want to really go into their process. They will send engineers, they will send finance people to help their vendors become better businesses. So I've always taken that approach where all my vendors, I have a much deeper connection with them, much deeper relationship. And I want to really understand their business and help them with their business. So a lot of times I'll spend more time talking to my vendors about their business than they're talking about mine. But what it does, it elevates my status with them to a higher level. So if I need stuff, I'm the first one, but also they're also looking out for me in terms of finding me clients, finding me talent, finding me. I found out that, my last company, half of the employees that I had, half of the talent that I have came from one vendor. He hired all the people for me. And he pitched how great my company was when it was, a startup, and then essentially he recruited for me. So I think there are a lot of companies that don't take advantage of that, don't take advantage of deepening their relationship with their customers, with their vendors, with their employees, and then leveraging those relationships to grow, to improve, to recruit, and all that stuff. In business, there are only like two levers really that you're pushing. You're always either acquiring customers or acquiring talent. Sometimes your bottleneck is customers, so you spend marketing and sales to go acquire them until you have more customers than you can manage. Then the next thing is about acquiring talent, going recruiting or developing that talent internally until you have more capacity to handle more customers. Then you go and try to get more clients. You know what I mean? So you constantly have to be looking at both and understanding where's your bottleneck. And there's a great book called The Goal, The Theory of Constraint. It's a fiction business book, which is fun to read. But it talks about this concept of bottlenecks, where in every business there may be like 3 or 4 or 5 systems or departments. And you have ingredients that go from one end, and then on the other end you got products and sales. And if these 4, 5, or 6 different departments, one of those departments is the slowest, and that one department that's the slowest is your bottleneck. And the speed of the bottleneck is the speed of the whole operation. So if your operation has one system that's the slowest, that's the speed that sets the whole operation. So if you speed up that system or that department, if you make it faster, another department will become the slowest. Therefore, your business is taking the speed of that one department. So as a business owner, all you're doing is that whack-a-mole, where you're going from one department, speeding up, finding the bottleneck and then speeding it up. And so a lot of times you have it either in, like the big ones are usually sales and recruiting, but then in the middle of that, you may have finance, you may have, accounting, you may have all these different things that can become, or vendors that can become bottlenecks. And I think that awareness is very important.
And speaking of awareness, for the entrepreneur, most often than not, they're probably the bottleneck as soon as they start getting momentum and traction and scale. They're trying to solve all these, like you said, all these problems, and then they don't realize that they're probably the bottleneck. Is because too much stuff is going through them and not being delegated, and that's usually when your head's down, it's really hard to realize that, oh wait, I'm the problem. Like I need to get out of this seat and put somebody else here. So.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, at some point the leadership skills become the bottleneck, and then you just have to fix that in order for the company to grow.
Yep. Oh, beautiful. So what we had the real estate company, you did sales, residential sales, and then you went back into acquiring companies. You do real estate as well, but what after your first experience, and then doing some other stuff in between, and then going back into business, what attracted you back into acquisition of business versus most people that go from residential sales would kind of stay in the residential real estate would kind of stay in the real estate. Maybe they go from residential to commercial and kind of scale or flip commercial, which I'm sure you do as well, but you also have that business acquisition, which most people don't.
Yeah, so I had so my whole life I've been chasing financial freedom. And then when I got financial freedom, I figured that I needed time freedom. And then so when I got financial and time freedom, I decided I needed geographic freedom. So not only I want to be able to control my time, I also want to be in control of where I am. Once I got all those things and I got to a place where I'm comfortable in Hawaii, everything is great, there was certain almost like a little bit of an emptiness, if you will. It's kind of like you get to the top of the mountain, it's like, okay, what else? And what I found out, I went back and started thinking about what are the things that I missed the most about when I was active in business. And there were two things that I loved the most: interacting with clients and interacting with employees, and helping my clients grow and grow their business and transform their lives, and helping my employees grow and develop and transform their lives. So those are the two things that I love the most. And business is one of the best places to be able to have both those two impacts on people. And I found it's a lot more fulfilling than buying a piece of real estate. You buy a piece of real estate, you may clean it up, you may fix it, but that's pretty much it. You don't feel that impact that you do when you buy a business that was struggling or that was having problems, where the employees were not happy, customers were not happy, leadership was not happy, and then you try to tweak it and solve their problem, and all of a sudden the employees that are not happy are excited and juiced up, and they're feeling motivated to come to work, and then the clients are so much happier, and they've gotten such a high level of service that they've never even thought was possible, because their standard was lowered so much. Now they have this like higher level of service that they couldn't even imagine was possible. And then you have like, your vendors are juiced up. They're excited. They want to learn. They want to know how this transformation happened and how can they do that and how can they do it for themselves. So I love that's part of my consulting days. I used to come in and see the business that's about to die, and then put life in it and see it thrive. That's the part that I enjoyed the most. So for me, acquisition is a way for me to do this while essentially benefiting from it in a financial term, as opposed to just getting a check as a consultant. I can take the ride with that business, because before I would go to a business, I would help fix it, but then I'm done. I get paid and I leave, and I'll never see the end result afterwards. So this is a way for me to take the ride with the business the whole way.
Love it. And then you're also doing real estate too. So you're
Yeah.
doing all that while doing real estate. Is there any type of real estate that you are more specifically targeting, or is it just anything that's a good deal?
Yeah, so I'm very opportunistic. So I love triple net stuff. I love retail. I love multifamily. But I'm very interested these days. Right now, I'm more focused on the office space. Offices gotten beaten up a lot lately, and I think that's where the next opportunity is, and that's why we started the co-working space. There's a lot of demand for flexible workspace, and small companies, there are a lot of small companies that are going to get started during this time, and they're going to need space to work, and they're not going to have the financials or the ability to sign 3-year leases. So if we can allow them to be in our space for a year, to month, whichever, just to kind of and then grow within the space, I think is very fulfilling. They're willing to pay more per square foot, a lot more per square foot, to get that flexibility. So it's a win-win-win, where we're helping an entrepreneur start a business and expand in a flexible way, and then we're helping the real estate asset, and for it to not deteriorate, not get all destroyed. And we're able to make money, and also we're able to help the community by creating jobs and creating opportunities for a lot of people.
Love it. I don't hear a whole lot of people going after office space lately, and mainly because I do multifamily, so most of my conversations revolve around that. But I definitely see it. Multifamily or office got crushed during COVID, and people couldn't go to work and things like that. Or a lot of companies realized that they can cut their labor and stuff like that down by having these people work from home or remote. So
yeah,
definitely probably some good opportunities out there to scoop these office spaces up. I did hear, little tangent or whatever, but I did hear a very novel business plan the other day, and I never heard anything like it, and I thought it was pretty cool. So anybody's listening, I want to check if you do this, but it was a guy who he created like a flex space, kind of like your office co-working space.
Yeah.
But he did it for kind of like the WeWork type thing, but he did it for medical or those type of things where it's like the units are completely outfitted. So it's got like your tables and everything like that. But he has like, and then he has the screens are completely, or the signs out front are completely digital. So it's on like Monday, Wednesday, Friday is the chiropractor. So the chiropractor goes in there and uses the space, but then all of the advertising on the front will click over to his ads.
Oh, wow.
And then like Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday is like, maybe a physical therapist. But they're using the same space, but all the banners and everything outside in the outside the building will like switch over to, Pete's physical therapy, blah, 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 on his days that he's there. And I was like, wow, that's pretty nice. So they're willing to pay a lot more per square foot because they have the flexibility. They only need the space 3 days a week and things like that. So on the time that they're using it, but at the end of the month, he's probably making 50% more because he has 3 people using the same exact space.
Yes.
So I
thought
I thought that was pretty good. And I was like, I'll write that down. So
I think there is a need for that. It's funny because you said that because I have friends who have started these these businesses around what are the Botox injections and hair implants and all that.
Yeah.
And a lot of those services, they concentrate their clients into like 1 or 2 days a week.
Yes.
And so they go and they'll book the space for like 10 hours and do maybe like 10, 12 clients. And then boom, that's all they do. Like, so a lot of them start 1 day a week, which is fascinating. I never thought about the screen thing. That was unique.
Yeah.
And I wonder how can you retrofit these offices where you don't put a lot of capex and it's simple enough and it's clean enough and it works for multiple different types of services. So I like it a lot.
Let's jump on a call after this. And let's hash this out.
Yes,
but,
let's do it.
Yeah, I just thought it was a very novel.
But I can tell you, I looked at a business. I looked at a company. It's a business, but it's also there were 3 buildings that I looked at last year, and the guy had bought office space in 2008, 2009 when the crash happened, and these were like big suites where like it would be a 6,000 to 9,000 square feet suites within the buildings. And there was like, it was multiple story buildings. One of them was 6-story. One of them was like about four stories. But what he did, he parceled them into like 10 by 10s and 10 by 12, 20. And he would rent them month to month to all these different services. So he had like, there were nutritionists, there were insurance people, mortgage people, real estate people, there were churches in some of them. There were hairdressers, there were makeup artists, all kinds of stuff in this like one building had 400 businesses. It was crazy. And then it was kind of like this maze of offices, but he had like a wait list. It was high demand. It was very easy to manage because he had a 1 person full time sitting there doing this, and it was month to month. It was cheap, but his cash flow was amazing. And but compared like for the individual people, it was super cheap. It was $300, $400 a month for this little box, and they were happy to pay it. And there was very low churn. And even if there's a churn, it could get filled very quickly. So I think there's a lot of demand. I think historically, office real estate has been done in a way where these investment companies wanted to maximize the yield out of the lease. So they push these 3-year leases with increases over time and that long commitment. And entrepreneurs have shied away from that because they don't want to make that 3-year commitment. And I think given the flexibility, people willing to pay more per square foot to get that flexibility to go up and down in size as they need to. So I think that's where the opportunity is going to go.
We're recording this in end of March 2023. A lot of stuff's going on. So what is your take on kind of where we are in the market? SVB just collapsed. Signature Bank was a First Republic. I think another one, or Credit Suisse. So like they're going down and everything like that, and everybody has their kind of reasons of why they went down. It seems pretty straightforward. But what is your take on where we're at in the market, and what are you doing different in your current portfolio, or to kind of hedge against it and protect it? But then also, as you're going out and acquiring more, what are you looking for?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, the Federal Reserve is driving this. The increasing the rates at an aggressive pace to dampen inflation. Inflation is still high, so they will keep raising rates. We're going against liquidity crunches that are showing up everywhere. The banking system is gonna, slow down the way how they finance things. So it'll be harder to find money. A lot more people are gonna like hold on to their cash and try to like survive. But I think that the feds have tools, and they've done this before, and then they have tools to be able to combat anything that will, any breakage in the economy. So that's the tricky thing. Like on one side of my brain tells me, okay, inflation is going to be high for a bit, through the end of the year and into the second half of next year, meaning that the Federal Reserve is going to be required to keep rates high for a while. But at the same time, I know that they don't want to break financial stability. And if something big happened, they will have to come in and fix it and pause it. So they have tools to be able to act fast. So I think that's where the conundrum is. Are they going to stay strong and keep rate high, or are they going to blink and try to solve the problem? Either way, we're going to be in this uncertain environment for a good 12 months. And so for me, I need to make sure that, we have liquidity in all the businesses that we own. We have liquidity in the assets that we have. We don't have anything that's bleeding cash. And so liquidity is going to be premium. And I need to start having conversations with lenders as early as possible to understand where they're at mentally. I love talking to lenders. I love talking to banks. And that's part of like what we talked about earlier about building deep relationships and building connection and helping these bankers or these lenders with their own business, and like to truly care about I think of a lender or a banker as a supplier of money, of liquidity. And I want to help them, either I'll help them in their life or help them with their business, whatever is important to them. So I take them to dinners. I send them gifts. You know what I mean? I really care for these guys, and I build real relationships. So I get first access to information that can be actionable. So staying close to these lenders, understand where they're thinking, where their lending committees, what kind of conversations their lending committees are having, what kind of deals have they turned down, what kind of deals have they financed, and why. I think those are very critical. So if you're an investor in any category, you should be talking to lenders all the time. You should be having 2 lunches or 2 dinners with a lender and a banker every week, automatically, and then reinvested and be invested deeply in a few of those relationships. So I think it's very critical. Liquidity is going to be valuable moving forward, and that's going to be an important thing to do. And then just cut everything that's not necessarily, whether it is in your business or your personal finances, doesn't matter. Cut, liquidity, preserve liquidity, and just, be attentive. There will be opportunities. I think there will be a ton of opportunities that are going to come up in the next, 12 to 16 months. This is when people kind of freak out, and that's where the opportunities show up, where, people think that the world's never going to be better, and then you're thinking that it will get better. Eventually we'll get, and then that's where the price arbitrage comes in. So if they think the world is screwed and you think it's not, that's where you make your money.
Yeah, one of my actually our first break for Tri-City Equity Group, our first kind of big break on a deal was a 48 unit, and we closed that on March 17th, 2020. And last minute, I was able to negotiate. And this was like our first big kind of apartment complex that wasn't a JV. So we did a 52 unit JV. And then we did this one, but like COVID just broke, like the world was ending. And I was able to kind of use that, I guess, fear. We ended up negotiating the price down like last minute, 11th hour. It was like $100,000 off the price, which it doesn't sound like much, but the 48 unit was only, I already bought it for 70 cents on the dollar anyway. So I was able to get another $100,000 off last minute and a credit. And, using that, with that, we just use that as liquidity because for COVID, we're like, nobody's going to pay rent for the whole year. So that's what I used as my leverage was like, I have to make sure that I can pay the mortgage for the next 2 years because, everybody's saying eviction moratorium, whatever. So we were able to get that. And then that was my first kind of experience as an investor. I've been able to kind of use like the market fears and whims and kind of things like that. And, to our advantage as investors as we negotiate. So.
That's a great story. Absolutely. And I mean, that's where it's at. If people feel that the future is going to be worse than the present, they're going to be willing to give you a break on the price. And that's where you get your best opportunities. You just got to make sure you make you're taking a calculated risk. Your upside is much higher than your downside. So as long as your risk is asymmetric, then you're fine.
Yep, absolutely. So today's market, I think we're the same, kind of same outlook. I think it's bullish overall. In the next year or two is probably not going to be great. So we're doing all the same things. We did for cost cutting internally. We did the Profit First. I don't know if you ever heard of that book.
Yeah.
Profit First. Actually, I think it was recommended on the GoBundance small business microtrap.
Yeah.
So I read that and we did that and we ended up cutting like a lot of expenses and subscriptions and crap out of the business that we didn't need. So we're just increasing our surplus of cash flow there. And then I was with my banker today actually and getting her perspective on, from a banker's standpoint of where the market's at and what I should look for and what questions I should be asking, her and other bankers, are they on the watch list? What are they investing in? Things like that. What are they cutting? One of the things that she said that when she was living through the 2008 crash was the first thing that goes is like credit lines. So she's like, I've seen so many people to your point of the Bank of America one. And her example today was on developers where developers just got like their $5 million, $10 million, $20 million credit lines just nixed overnight and they called them due and they had a bunch of inventory. And so a lot of those guys went bankrupt and even though their balance sheet was fine, like they were fine, their credit was fine, their balance sheet was fine. The banks just called their credit lines due and they didn't have, and nobody would buy the debt at that time. And so they couldn't go refinance the debt on the balance, the lines of credit. So she kind of warned me about that a little bit. And then kind of what happens when a bank goes under, what's been in the news has all been, what happens to the depositors, whatever. But she was like, well, what happens to all the loans?
Yeah.
That bank wrote, like what happens to those? And so she was like, that's the kind of the horror that you need to know about because what happens, FDIC will come in and they will get somebody, Bank of America or Chase or, one of the big ones to essentially buy these notes or at least service them. But then those banks will just call them all due. And she said, that's what happened on the last one.
Wow.
The small regionals were going under. So like a Bank of America would come up and absorb that bank because the government asked them to. But then, they would call all the notes due. So then if you have a property that's completely operating fine and everything and your DSCR is good, and then the bank would just say, nope, this note's due. You have whatever, 60 days or something to stop. So she's like, that's kind of what has happened last time that in 2008, 2009, that they're not mentioning this time about, everybody's just talking about the depositors and stuff like that. But
yeah,
so
I think that's
a lot of
why.
information from her.
So I've seen it both ways. I've seen it where they call them due, and I also seen it where they don't assign it quick enough, and then the person just like hanging out there without any servicer, so they don't really pay for a year or two, You know what I mean? So it could go either way.
Yeah.
But I think that's why the FDIC and the Feds, they try to sell these banks to other banks. So they don't, like what they did with Countrywide, with JP Morgan, they did with Wachovia, they did that with B of A. And so I think they try to sell these companies to a bank to another bank. And I think that's what they're gonna do a lot of this if we have situations like this.
Yeah.
The problem we have is that these banks are fine. I think they just got stuck with with these treasury bonds that are worth less when they want liquidity, and then there's a little bit of a panic in the market, so people are pulling their money out. So I think they're okay, but I think the Feds have the tools to be able to kind of solve this. They just need to communicate it even more. I think there's a call that Jay Powell is doing this week. I think it's on Thursday, and I think his first number one mission is going to be to calm things down and to give people that certainty that the banks are going to be okay and they're going to back any bank that's going to be struggling. So I'm not worried about the banks per se. I'm more concerned about their desire to lend. And I think if they're feeling stressed and they're not lending as much, that means they're not refinancing as much. That means everything that's going to come to get refied in the next few years are going to be a problem. A lot of the multifamily investors and mobile home investors and all kinds of investors that have gotten very aggressive the last couple of years and have built their model based on either selling or refinancing in 2 years are going to be challenged because they're going to have to bring more equity. They have to raise more money and bring in more equity to the deals to get that refinance. So I think that's where the commercial real estate is going to be challenged. So I'm hoping we're going to get through this thing quick to be able to get a resolution on the other side.
Just have liquidity ready. That's the bottom thing. So I'm doing everything I can to get cash, access to cash.
Yeah, and then and have the relationships with investors that want to invest, because there will be you'll need more capital. You need more investors to come in and recapitalize deals.
One of the questions I have now is kind of more on like the lessons learned. So over your 25 years of experience of both an investor, business owner, many markets, many different asset classes, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned or biggest mistakes you've made?
Businesses in general are pretty much the same. The way I think of a business, I think, like we talked about earlier, the drivers are either the clients or the talent. So whenever I go through a business, I figured out a framework on how to kind of like manage it from top down or bottoms up. So the goal for me is to go find what the customer wants. So like I'll give you an example. My consulting days, when I get dropped into a business in the middle of nowhere, and I'm told that this business is struggling and it's in an industry that I've never done before, and go fix it. Great. So my first thing is to understand what this business does. What is the value proposition of this business? So I go to the client and I talk to their, I ask for the top 5 clients, and I go to meet them. And I say, hey, tell me what you love about this business. Tell me what you don't like about it. Tell me what you like about the product. Tell me what you don't like about the product. And I take my notes. And I understand now the value proposition of the product to that customer. Then I go back to the business and I say, okay, let's create, this is what the customer said, this is the ideal product or the ideal service. Let's say if you're in the service business, this is what the customer says their ideal experience should be like. And okay, let's design a process, how we're gonna deliver that. Even if it's not scalable yet, let's deliver that. And then we'll deliver it to the customer and we'll ask the question, is this what you meant when you told us what you told us last time? Yes. Tweak this, but if you do these 2 things, it will be perfect. Great. Let's go back to it. Come back and ask again. Is this what you want? Absolutely. This is perfect. I can't believe that you guys pulled it off. You guys are amazing. Tell me what I can do to help so you can keep doing this. Great. Now we go back and figure out how can we design a process to deliver that experience or that product to the customer. And so we map the whole thing from, what needs to happen to how the customer is going to feel about that experience. We call them feel points. And we want to control those feel points throughout the process. And so now we map the process. Now, what kind of people have to be in what kind of seats? So we create essentially what we call like a personality profile or a psychographic profile for that person that's going to sit in that seat, that's going to deliver that service, that experience, or that feel point to that customer. And we get really deep into that. We really want to know. And once we have the process and we have the people, then we layer the technology on top. What kind of technology that we're going to help these people execute on this process and do it at a scale? Great. Now we do that. Now the next level is accountability. What kind of level of accountability do we need, or supervisors that we need to hold these people accountable to these KPIs within this process? And then once we do that, then the next thing is now we identify what kind of people do we have. We want to keep them. So what is it that's in common that we can design a culture around, or we can articulate a culture from? So I do like very deep surveys on who these people are. Are they dog people or cat people? Are they taco people or are they burger people? Are they like it cold, they like it hot, they like country music or they like dance music? All these things I want to know. Are they parents or are they single? Are they young or they're old? Are they whatever they are? I want to find out who they are, what's in common, and then articulate it back to them. It's like, okay, guys, this is who you are. All of you guys is what's common, and this is what your value proposition is, and this is what your culture is. And then we're going to create an environment that caters to that culture. And then the next thing is, when you articulate that back and you create an environment for that, what you're trying to create links among them. So one of the things that I learned from the multifamily guys was that they, like a lot of the luxury guys, they spend a lot of money on churn. And so they're trying to reduce the amount of churn. So what they do, they go and spend money on creating like a game room, creating like a wine storage, creating like a free beer fountain, coffee, whatever. And those things are just to allow people to make connections. And what found is that they found that when someone has no friends in the building, it's a 50-50% for them renewing the lease. If they have one friend, that 50 goes up to 70. If they have two, it goes up to 80. If they have three, it goes up to 95%. Certainty they're going to renew the lease. So having relationships and having connections reduces churn, which I want in my business, because it takes me a lot of time to recruit somebody, to train them, to develop them, to get them to care about my business. I don't want to lose them. So I want them to in my business. So I spend quite a bit of time creating an environment for these people to have relationships where when they need to move, they call 5 people from my company. When they from their coworkers, when they have a birthday party, half the company is at their birthday party. When they have a wedding, there are 2 tables from our company. So they have deep relationships within the company, which creates that retention. And a lot of companies don't think this very well, but talent compounds. So the longer people stay within your company, good people, talented people, the more they learn, the more that learning compounds. The more they communicate among each other and they build trust, that trust compounds. And everything ends up in the bottom line. All that compounding of relationships, sticky employees make sticky clients. Sticky clients make sticky vendors. Sticky vendors, sticky employees, sticky clients create lower costs, which is come from trust, which creates better margins. So investing in those things, Peter Drucker, who's the father of management, the godfather of management, says that the reason for a business to exist is to acquire customers, is to keep them. And I think that is a little bit one more level up, which is the reason for a business to exist is to acquire talent and to keep it. Because if you acquire the talent, they're going to acquire the customers. And if you keep the talent, you're going to keep the customers.
Love that. Masterclass over. And that was good.
Awesome.
Ah, that was really good. All right. I got like a whole page of notes just
That's a
for
lot of learning. Yes.
stuff to do in my own company right now. Like, all right, guys, meeting tomorrow. That's beautiful. So, as we start wrapping up here, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Good question. I would say be patient, but move fast. So I'll give you an example. So be patient with, like, I was always had this anxiety to do stuff. I always had this, kind of like I wanted to achieve things fast. And if I was talking to my younger self, I was like, be patient. It's okay to take a lot of action, but if the outcomes don't come right away, it's okay. Just there's cyclicality to things. There are a lot of things in the environment, and then there are times where things move slow, and there are times where things go fast. And as long as you're consistent, you'll be able to take advantage of those times when things move fast. And the other side of it is I've always had these 5-year transformation cycles. So every 5 years, I've had massive transformation in my life. And I think I could have done it in 3 years, and I didn't need 5 years. So, like now, this phase of my life, I think of them in 3-year chunks. I think now, if I in the amount of information I have and the amount of experience I have, I can achieve those things that used to take me 5, 6 years in 2, 3 years. And so, being patient with outcomes, but making plans that are shorter term as a 3 years as opposed to 5 years.
What is the best book or books you recommend other than Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I was telling you about that book, The Goal. Um, it's a wonderful book. It actually has a series of them, so it goes through operations and then it goes through sales, it goes to finance, and it's through the story of this entrepreneur, which is a fictitious, but it's very philosophical. So a lot of the frameworks that you build from there are going to be useful forever for a long time. So I would highly recommend that book series.
Got it written down. What is your superpower?
I would say foresight. I can see around the corner. I can see where things will end up 2, 3 years from now, and yeah. So I think that's my thing, is that foresight, seeing ahead, seeing around the corner, and then being able to go and to act with no information. Um, Being comfortable with ambiguity, be comfortable with lack of very little information and making decisions. So I think it's kind of those are two together, if you will. Yeah. So I think that's my superpower.
That's a really good one to have. If you could have one, that's a really good one. So, last question here: what did any last bit of advice or comments or calls to action for our listeners?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of transformation, a lot of change happening in the world today. I think it is stressful, but just be cognizant that in these times is where the opportunity resides. And the key is that you learn more when things are unraveling. You learn more when things are breaking apart. So just don't put your head in the sand. Don't get scared and shut down. Keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, listen and learn from everything. Don't let it impact you. Don't let it impact your decision. And then keep just putting one foot in front of the other. Make the right, plan for the long term, and then take one step at a time. Keep learning, keep observing what's happening. Don't let anxiety take over. I think that's where the biggest challenges of these periods is that there's so much going on that sometimes people just like shut down and get into their shell. And this is where the best opportunities to learn and the best opportunities to invest and the best opportunities to build. This is it right now.
I can definitely attest to that. I guess that anxiety of not knowing what's coming, it just like drains your energy, and you're
Yes.
like, all right, just keep going, keep going. Like I just want to go home, go to sleep. But you're like, nope,
Yes.
I gotta keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
The world's crazier now, but I gotta focus on this. So I absolutely know what that's like. So
And know that physiology can impact your psychology. So if you're feeling anxious or feeling like stressed, there's a lot of tools. YouTube has Wim Hof
Oh yeah.
Breathing exercises takes 10 minutes in the morning. You feel amazing. Do the Tony Robbins priming meditation. It takes 10 minutes. You'll feel amazing. Go for a 30-minute, weight workout, or, 30-minute walk, or take a cold shower. All these health physiology things impact the way you feel, impacts the way you think. And if you can clear your mind and think from a more positive, oxygenated brain. When your brain has more oxygen, it feels a lot clearer. When you don't have a lot of oxygen in your brain, you feel anxious. So it's not healthy. So feel and understand that your physiology is impacting your psychology.
That's awesome. I need to get some Wim Hof stuff. I don't like I don't know if I'll dig the cold ice bath stuff, but I got a sauna, so that's like
Yeah,
step in the right direction.
the same effect. Yeah,
Oh.
it's the same effect.
All right. Well, this is a fantastic show. Tons of information. Thanks for coming on, and looking forward to seeing you. I don't know, maybe Jackson Hole. Will you be at Jackson Hole?
Yeah. No, unfortunately, no.
Oh, well then
Well,
I'll be on an island soon enough.
yes.
All right.
Thank you for having me.